the regular meeting of the City Planning and Zoning Board will come to order, and it is March 3rd. And preliminary matters, agenda, are there any additions or deletions from our agenda today? Board members? Nope. Staff?
None from staff, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We'll move forward with the approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
I do have a question under the staff's report for the voluntary annexation. It said in the first sentence, it's attached to the original minutes. I'm not sure I understand what original is supposed to mean.
Those are the minutes that we keep on file.
Okay. Thank you.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Second.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The next item is public comment. And you have an opportunity to come before the board and speak on any issue you'd like to speak on. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the agenda. Or you can do both. You can speak in public comment and you can come during the item that's on the agenda today. So if you have it's open public comment like now. If you'd like to come forward, do so. Seeing nobody, I'm going to close public comment. The item on the agenda today is a quasi-judicial conditional use and site plan application submitted by Promised Land Anglican Church, Inc., to construct a 27,200 square foot place of worship with a 350-seat sanctuary and accessory uses at 665 20th Street. And the number on that one is SP15000019. And because it's quasi-judicial, is there any disclosure by planning and zoning board members as far as ex parte?
I have no ex parte disclosure. However, I really have to state that I'm very familiar with the site. Lived here for a long time. I go past it at least twice a day, every day. And I remember when it was the old school site also. So
I just have the same thing to say. Where I work, I travel 6th Avenue quite often, so it's very hard for me to, it's easier to go down 6th Avenue to go where I'm going rather than go around it, so I'm familiar with the site.
Any other disclosures? Then I have my own disclosure, and that is that I'm a member of that Anglican church. And I have met with council, and they said I did not have to disqualify myself from this meeting because I have nothing to gain from it financially. Next item is the swearing in of applicants and staff and all witnesses by the city clerk. So if you wish to speak today in the audience, please stand and be sworn in.
If you'll raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Is there any? If there's any exhibits, we'll bring them forward at that time. At the time you speak, okay? Staff, your opening comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned earlier, this is a proposed site plan application for construction of a new church with a 350-seat sanctuary and accessory uses. The subject site is located at the southwest corner of State Road 60 or 20th Street and 6th Avenue. And as mentioned also earlier, the site is currently vacant, but previous to that, the use there was the Osceola Magnet Elementary School. The zoning of the subject property is R-1, which is single-family residential. And in that zoning district, the place of worship is a conditional use. So what you have before you is a site plan, but you also have a conditional use application. As part of that requirement, the applicant was required to hold a neighborhood meeting for the subject property and project, and that was held in July of 2015. And all the backup material for that neighborhood meeting is attached in your packet. Just to summarize, there were 7 persons in attendance, not including some of the applicant representatives and others involved in the project. And just a summary from the minutes, the attendees did ask questions regarding stormwater and tree preservation. And once again, all that documentation is in your package. As part of the review, the Land Development Code requires that we address the site plan itself, the evaluation of the site plan. And we do that based on our land development regulations. And first off, we review that, once again, based on our land development regulations. And the site plan itself meets all those requirements. And what I mean by all of those requirements, as you've heard before, minimum open space, stormwater management, parking, landscaping, and setbacks, and height restrictions. Those are just some of the few of the requirements that are reviewed. And this project meets all of them, and it includes upgrades and improvements to the landscape buffers and the stormwater retention facilities as part of this site plan. In addition to the general land development regulations for the site plan, we also look at the site design performance standards for the site plan, and there are 4 of those. And the first one is the design and the layout of the internal circulation of the project. And that the project does meet all the requirements for internal circulation, driveways, etc. The second review of the site design is the external, if you will, location of the driveways. And once again, the project does meet all the standards there. And just as a side note, the project will be consolidating some of the existing driveways that are there now. There'll be a driveway ingress and egress along 20th Street and then also on 60th Street, but the driveway in particular on 20th Street was moved further west from the intersection, and then the driveway on 6th Avenue was consolidated into one egress and egress. So staff feels that that's an improvement to the traffic flow and any potential conflicts in the traffic. The third and fourth site design standard that was reviewed basically is impacts on adjacent properties, the neighborhood, activities, the safety, stability of the residential neighbors in the immediate vicinity, etc. And as noted before, the proposed project is approximately 27,000 square feet, and it includes a reduction in the overall size of the previous use, which was the school, which was approximately 96,000 square feet. And also required in the site plan was a traffic assessment that was prepared by Kimley Horn. And that traffic assessment indicates that the traffic, compared to the previous use, which was the elementary school, will be significantly less than the proposed new project. So based on that analysis and all 4 of the site plan land design standards have been met, performance standards have been met with the project. And there are a few also development standards that we look at as a typical site plan, and one of them is the mechanical equipment and the screening of the waste and recycles, and then the exterior lighting. And all 3 of those the project complies with those requirements, and we just wanted to mention those. So that's really a quick summary of the site plan itself, and then we go forward into the conditional use requirements. Because as mentioned, it's R-1 single-family residential, so you have conditional use requirements in addition to your general review of the site plan. And basically, there are 7 criteria for the conditional uses, and we've outlined all of those in the staff report. But just to summarize them, and to mention again to you all that conditional use, it may be permitted by the City Planning and Zoning Board, provided that the use is designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that the public health, safety, and welfare are protected. And that's taken straight from our code. Conditional uses will be considered on a case-by-case basis, so that's also in our code. And the 7 criteria that we looked at in reviewing the project, first of which is generally speaking the noise, traffic, odor, other potential nuisances. And then the second is the actual scale of the proposed project. And as part of our staff's analysis, the proposed church site abuts State Road 60 and 20th Street, which is a principal arterial roadway to the north, and then 6th Avenue to the east is a major collector. And based on that review and the traffic volumes, there's approximately 10,000 trips on 20th Street in that location, and approximately 6,000 trips on 6th Avenue in that location. The proposed church is anticipated to generate an additional projected 246 daily trips, or 15 a.m. and p.m. trips. As you know, that's stated specifically in the more in detail in the traffic impact statement, which is in your backup. The required 20-foot landscape buffers are also provided, and staff finds that the noise and the aesthetic buffering to the adjacent properties will be beneficial. And also noted in our report, the new building should provide somewhat of a noise buffer between the traffic on State Road 60 and the properties to the south and to the east. Also, the overall size of the parcel is 14 acres. However, the actual limits of development for the project is actually approximately 10 acres, a little less than 10 acres. It's the section that you see in the site plan. The southern part of the parcel, if you will, is not part of the development for this project. And all the open space and the setbacks and et cetera are calculated based on that 9.32 acres and not the entire 14 acres. And given that there are significantly larger setbacks, open space, that the project's proposing much more than the minimum requirements for this zoning district. Also, north and across State Road 60, there are commercial uses existing there. There's a shopping center, there's a hotel, and there's also an existing church to the south and east of the site along 6th Avenue. In terms of the scale of the proposed building, the staff finds that it is in keeping with the uses in the vicinity, especially you have commercial uses to the north. And there's also a church close by on the east side. In particular, the proposed building size is also significantly below the maximum allowed floor area for the zoning district. And the size of the parcel is in consideration is almost double the minimum size for a conditional use in this zoning district. So you have an additional increase in open area setbacks and a lower FAR, floor area ratio, for the project. The third criterion that the code requires us to look at is the site for the proposed use must be either located on an arterial or collector roadway or abutting a commercial district. And in this case, this project meets both. It is abutting the principal arterial, the 20th Street, and the collector is 6th Avenue, and it also is across the street on 60 is the commercial area and professional offices. The fourth criteria to review is the level of service. The code states that the traffic impacts for the proposed development shall not lower the level of service. And as mentioned in the traffic report, the proposed church is a less intense traffic generator as compared to the previous school use. And based on that analysis and the capacities of the both roadways, the project's not considered to lower the level of service. And there's adequate capacity on both roadways to support the proposed project. Fifth criteria, all the site utility lines, including all the utilities, shall be underground, and they are proposing that in this project. And then the sixth criteria is the 20-foot landscape buffer, that, as well as this minimum of the 6 feet in height hedge. And that is a requirement of the code, and the project is in compliance with that requirement. They are proposing the 20-foot landscape buffer and the 6 feet in height hedge along the west, east, and south property lines of the project. So really surrounding it, except for the front, which in this case is the north boundary of State Road 60, you'll have that 6-foot hedge that's required in the code. The seventh criteria is the dumpsters and the solid waste containers. They need to be a minimum of 25 feet from any abutting single-family use, and the project complies with that requirement as well. So the staff finds that all 7 of the conditional use criteria are met by this project. And then in addition to those 7, there's a couple more provisions that are required specific to places of worship in this zoning district. One, I mentioned earlier about the minimum size of the area. It needs to be 5 acres. And in this case, it's 14 total, with that little over 9 acres that's part of the project development today. And then also the second criteria is that the building or any outside activity shall not be located within 25 feet of any side or rear lot line. And that is the case. The project meets both those specific provisions of the code. Based on that quick review of the requirements of the code, the staff is recommending approval of the site plan and the conditional use. And there are some typical generic, if you will, comments also for conditions of the site plan and the approval process. And with that, we would entertain any questions you may have.
Staff have questions board has questions of staff?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
On the 4.73 acres that is outside, that they own, that's outside the project, in the future for the development of that, if they wanted to expand into that, would they have to come back for conditional use for that particular property? Or does this conditional use we would issue today apply to that property as well?
The first, they would be required to come back as a conditional use, even if it's in an expansion of an existing conditional use. If this project gets approved, would be required to come back to you all as a conditional use.
And they could subdivide and sell that off as residential at some point in the future if they decided to do so without coming back to us, right?
Correct. If they so decided to basically split the parcel and sell off the 4 or so acres to the south, that's possible, yes.
If they would do that, I want to point out they're going to have to extend their landscaping right now. Okay, so that would be caught during that process. But they could do just what you said.
Right, because theoretically they meet all the requirements based on that 9.3 acres of the site development.
Right. Okay.
Additional questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll ask the applicant.
I have just a couple.
Yeah.
Do you want?
Yeah, go ahead,
Is that
Ken.
okay? On page 7, when we're close there, page number 7, number 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line down, it talks about the owner of the abutting property shall have the option to select a solid 6-foot high concrete block wall in place of a 6-foot high landscape screen.
Yes.
Has that owner been notified of that option?
The owner, well, the project representative is aware of it. I do want to mention that I did receive a call from one of the adjacent property owners, and she was just questioning whether this was the same project that was part of the neighborhood meeting. But also, she mentioned that she in particular and a few of the others did not want walls. They would
Understood.
prefer the hedge. So
Well, I don't know if there is an abutting. Aren't we? Don't we have right of way around most of this anyway?
we have right of way, but it's still a requirement, even if it's
No,
right
it says abutting. Abutting is not, right of way does not make it abutting. Anyway, that part of the code, I won't enforce that part of the code. I don't believe it's illegal to leave it open to discretion of neighbors. You could have 4 neighbors that want, 2 of them want, it leads to a mess. So we really should just leave this out. It's one of those things we need to change in the code. So we've never followed that. I can tell you since I've been here, because I think there could be a challenge to that. It's not fair to the owners. I think the screening takes care of what the intent of the code is in there. So that's how we've applied
So
it.
if I understand you
Yeah.
correctly, Mr. McGarry, the 6-foot-high concrete block wall, that wording should not even be in there.
Well, I mean, it's up to the church. If the church wanted to put a 6-foot wall, but then they can either come back or put landscaping. They have their choice to go in there. And of course, the reason they have the neighborhood meetings is if you have adjacent owners that
Right,
would like
I
to have
understand.
something, the church may decide to follow, whatever, a hypothetical church may decide to follow, to do that. So that's why we have those kind of meetings.
So then we should take out the term "the owner."
Yeah, that has to be
So that,
taken care
should we
of.
take that out now?
Well, no, it's in the code.
We have to
but
change the code to do that.
It's in the code. We have to take it out of the code. But that we have places in the code I have to do that. I just haven't got around to it. And then if you look at the whole, the way the conditional use is written, the whole thing is a mess. And it needs to be, I've rewritten it, to be honest with you, that I could bring back. And it's one of those things that, it's just we haven't done yet. We try to, there are other things that have come along. So
How long before it's removed from the code?
Well, if I had 2 other lives, there are 2 other people working with me, I could do it sooner. But we'll try to do it over the next. I got to get the comp plan done before we start doing revisions. You remember I pointed
Yes.
out, for instance, in our residential districts, I'm going to combine all the multifamily could be in one chapter, like the single family, all the accessory uses and all. They all need to be in one place. The problem is when they did the code, a lot of that spread out over all these districts. Well, they conflict with each other. I mean, there are things missing. It's just the kind of thing. That's why you try to make everything as simple as possible. That's why we took all the parking and put it in one chapter, because we had the same problem. I don't mean to be, I just want to point that out. So we've been doing it that way, but it needs to be changed. There's no doubt about it.
All right, but you can't leave those 2 lines out right now.
Well, it doesn't mean anything to leave it out right now. Basically, this is just copying what's in the code, and that's what the code says. But for the next time we do this thing, we will leave that out so it doesn't mislead people.
All right. So even if they can't, even if one of the owners came in, they don't have any rights there whatsoever to ask for block.
Well, they have rights,
screening.
but they could come in and, I mean, you certainly would have the final say on that. That doesn't mean it's ended. I mean, I, as planning director, to interpret the code, I did that, but you have full authority to say the planning director has overstepped his bounds on this. You understand? I'm not trying to. I'm just saying. These are the kind of things they have to deal with day to day, and we've dealt with numerous churches now. We've not. I think we've had to deal with that, and it would be a mess if the churches, whoever came in, had to. Every property owner next to them could make a choice of what they wanted and not. I mean, if the churches want to do it, it's fine, but to have it that arbitrary, I just think it's very difficult to implement properly.
All right, the way it stands now, do they have to have a 6-foot-high landscape buffer?
Yeah,
Yes.
they have.
So is
yes.
that going to be there?
yes,
That's what they put in there.
yes.
So that's going to be there anyway.
That's
the buffer.
correct. That's a
the
requirement.
the only thing
Yeah,
here.
and let me point out another philosophical point with this whole thing. a conditional use is a conditional use, but this trying to put in concrete buffers all around these things basically is segregating a use that blends in with a lot of these neighborhoods and is part of the community. I don't think the intent was to do that. The intent was to screen those kind of high activity things from the residential use. So, I mean, we really need to look at this in the future, how we do conditional uses on that. And when we do the rewrite, I think that's what we need to look at.
Actually, you bring up a good point. Depending on activities for the future, what activities would take place on the site, you would determine whether you would need a concrete type of wall or something else that you could use to buffer the sound.
And
that's basically what it's for.
That's a possibility on an alternative.
All right.
I would also make a statement, Ken, just a discussion point is that when a property is set this far back from the street, it's much more of a park-like setting without having a hedge along the side. Much more pleasing to the drive-by person to see a park-like setting without having a hedge along the street. You can look into the park underneath the trees, and I think that could be a lot better. So absolutely, sometimes our code is in conflict with what may be best for the public interest.
I agree.
And you're looking for the flexibility
To do that.
Right. I think we need to look at them more closely. And
I think it's a practical application, not necessarily a code enforcement type arrangement.
And I would go back to this: if you have the flexibility in the code, whether you had to do a concrete wall, something else, or whatever, if you had to buffer sounds, that's basically what this is. And then, like with the chairman speaking about, depending on how far back the building is, you have a park-like setting, which you have enough distance, from what I'm understanding here, to buffer the noise. And do you want me to ask? I have some other questions.
Go ahead.
Ms. Manous,
Sure.
I do
know.
have a question, but I'll follow you. Go ahead.
Okay.
She has
No
to wait
problem.
now.
There you go.
She doesn't have to wait if she doesn't want to. They mentioned in here activities on site. What type of activities will be taking place there? And I'm not looking for a whole list.
Sure. No, the actual site plan, they will have adult, child, and teen classroom.
Okay.
And activities and a fellowship hall. Activities, I'm sure there's multiple different
All right,
versions
that's fine.
of that.
My next question, in your R1 zoning, what's the height in your R1 zoning?
In R1 zoning, for single family and duplexes, I believe. I know it's for single family, and I have to go back and look for duplexes.
It's duplexes.
It's duplexes as well. 35 feet.
And what's the zoning of this
these are
property?
35 and 15 for
35 and 15 for non-residential, which is in this case.
So which would be your total?
That'd be
50.
your total.
50.
Yes.
50, correct.
Okay, 50. Let me ask you this: where it shows, so you can go 50 because this is like a commercial application. You have 50 foot to the top of your steeple. Is that your total height with everything? Or is that? It looks like you have another little cross up top side there.
It's
Is that 50 to the top of the cross?
No, it's 50 to the top of the. It's considered a lightning rod, and we do allow lightning rods.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a lightning rod, then that is not a cross. So,
Well, there's a
It's a
cross
lightning,
attached
but-
to the lightning rod. If you want.
Yeah, you're not going to differentiate between the two, and we don't want to get into.
so that is a lightning rod then.
Well, it can be a lightning rod or not, but the basic
It's a cross-shaped lightning rod.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cross. It's a lightning rod with a cross on it.
Embellish.
The reason I ask that, depending on what you want to call it, a cross or
Right.
whatever, for the sake of argument, since you have 50 foot to the top of your steeple,
Right.
and whatever it looks like a cross to me, what you have here on your plan, okay, it looks like I don't want to say an X, but you have a T. It looks
Right.
like a T.
Correct.
All right, lightning rods for that particular building would be spec'd in from engineers to be a certain height. For the sake of argument, if the folks there wanted to put like another 30 foot or whatever up top side of a T-looking shape, they could. Right?
We don't have restrictions on
Okay.
sizes of lightning rods that I know of. So theoretically, I guess they could.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Then the other question I have, it talked about on the property, I think it's to the south, I think it is. It shows, are they little ponds or are going to be lakes, the little gray area? What?
Those are the retention areas, the gray areas to the
Right. So that's going to be
South and
the
west.
for the stormwater runoff, correct?
correct. And there is a proposed garden center area in the middle there.
Now, in the future, if they wanted to fill these areas in to extend their parking lot or add some buildings, can they do that? Fill in these
Oh,
retention
they're going to have
areas?
to meet stormwater, and
So
that's
this
why
is-
they've got the retention
this,
areas.
Okay, this is slotted for stormwater. That's
Yeah,
it.
I mean, they would have
Okay.
to.
Correct. And you, as you may have noticed on the plan, they do have some future potential
Okay.
expansions, and that's really only because they wanted to design the drainage for the full
But
capacity.
that's stormwater retention. There's not a
Correct.
page number on this, but it goes, let's see, page 7, page 8, page 9,
Speaking of the attachments,
yes,
okay.
project description, go to that page, and
Okay.
flip a page, development specifications, because
Okay.
I don't have any numbers. Actually, 2 of 2.
Okay.
All right, site plan application, 1 of 5. Go to the second page, which is not numbered on mine. Okay, are you there?
Site plan application.
Meeting minutes?
Right.
Neighborhood meeting minutes.
Neighborhood meeting minutes. Thank you.
Are you there?
Okay. Yes.
Flip that page, and you go to keep stormwater on site. I have a little paragraph on the next page, keep stormwater on site.
Yes, I see that.
Okay, my question is this. It talks about we are proposing to provide on-site drainage, except when there's a heavy rain. It will drain into the lakes. Okay, that's pretty clear. And into ditches and down into the river. What do they mean by that when it says into ditches? If they have more water, how much is the site is designed to hold X number of gallons of water? What are they talking about as far as going in the ditches? What ditches are they talking about? Then they talk about going into the river. Where is the outlet to the river?
Right.
The applicant can bring that up,
Yeah.
but typically in storm drainage, you don't build storm drainage to meet the most extensive rainfalls. So it all can't stay. It's to retain it, and then it releases it into the drainage system. And I think, Joe, the applicant can come up, and they can give you a little more detail how that'll work. All right?
Because I have a follow-up question once the individual comes up, because I have another one. Okay, I'll take a break.
Okay, my
Honey?
turn. Thank you. Level of service D obviously doesn't make me real happy, but it is the existing level of service now. I understand that.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at ingress and egress off the property, particularly on 6th Avenue, where the storm comes out. Where the egress and ingress come out. And does that come out? I can't identify on the map if there is a street directly opposite or just down to the south.
It's actually to the
You mean where it's the access from
19.
the building? There's not a
Where you ingress and egress off 6th Avenue?
There isn't a street across there.
Is not?
No.
19th Place
Here's
is further
19th right
up.
here.
Yeah.
Just up
Are you
here.
speaking
Here's
about
19th.
this area?
Yeah.
Okay,
Councilman
and
is?
those are all lots, so you couldn't be driving.
Okay,
through a
so
lot.
you're coming out directly opposite residential housing. What bothers, because you're going to be able to turn right or left at that point, plus there will be people turning into the property. It concerns me because on, particularly Sundays, there's a church down the road, and I'm worried what that's going to do to impact. Will it change level of service? I didn't
No,
see
no,
this
it's not going to
addressed.
change. No, level of service is really done during peak times. Remember,
Right.
these churches are not running their services during peak time. So
That's what I
technically,
was
we
concerned
do
about.
all this data comes out on this trips and all that, but it really doesn't affect level of service. There are very few churches, unless they're doing special events during the weekdays that where you have the heavy, PM. Which is usually the heaviest traffic flows, would
It
affect.
just seems to me that, when it was a school, that wasn't so impactful, to the
No,
to the
schools
street.
are very impactful. You can
But
because
did
of
they have the entrance at that point?
One of them.
Yes,
One
they
of
did.
them.
I
Yeah.
remember
One of
the
them.
school
Yeah.
buses
One of them,
there.
yes.
That's right.
They had what, three?
They had
3X, I can't.
4, actually.
Yeah, they had more.
Okay.
Yeah.
They had 2 on 60 and 2 on 6th, and what this project is proposing to do is consolidate
Okay.
the 2 on 6th Avenue to,
Okay.
which we feel will be beneficial, and then to move on 20th Street, they're also moving that driveway access further west, away from that intersection, which we also think is an improvement.
The other thing is, when it was a school, you had to drive very slowly there, too. And that's not going to be the situation here. There's no requirement to slow traffic.
Well,
Right?
other than meet the speed
Yeah.
limit. Yeah.
I
don't know what else to
I'm
say.
just wondering if we should be looking at another traffic control here for safety.
Just one comment too. That other church on 6th has a major exit off that other road to the south.
Right.
And
Yeah.
our sons went there to scouts, and we tended to always use that exit, not the 6th Street. So they do have two.
Correct, they do, and in this
The
case,
other-
they do.
The other church.
Yes, the other
Okay.
church is, I think it's 18th Street is X.
Yeah, it
And
went up and back,
6th Ave,
yeah.
yes,
And it went directly to Indian River Boulevard also.
correct,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Okay, that was my big concern about how impactful that was going to be, because across the street it is, single-family residential.
Right.
And, okay.
What, the road that Ms. Manous is speaking about, what is the speed limit on that road at this time?
6th Avenue?
Yes.
30, 25?
I drive it
It's in the
all
city.
the time.
35.
I think it's 35, I'd have to verify that, but it should be 35.
All right, let me ask you this, is that a city street?
6th Avenue?
No, 6th
it's
Avenue is a
county
Avenue?
So
road.
it is a county.
Yes. Mhm. It is.
Oh,
Questions?
I have just one question to Sherry, going back to the statement. There are 7 locations here for future possible expansions. 7 that I see on the site plan. Are those to be included with this approval, or would they have to come back if they make expansions in those locations?
Ms. Hillman, the latter, they will have to come back
Okay.
to you all and the whole process.
Hold on.
Unless,
It depends on what the additions are.
Right,
There's a
like-
threshold. So somebody wants to come, if they're building an accessory that's less than
True, like
500 square feet,
Right.
then they
Playground.
wouldn't have. But if it's a condition, a part of the whole approval, so I hate to just say that
Yeah,
they
right,
have to come
true.
back. So you,
Okay,
but
like one of
if
these-
it's anything major that would
Right.
trip it,
Right.
they would have to come back to you.
One of these would be a possible future expansion of parking. They would not have to come back.
Generally, if it's expansion of parking, it would probably have to come back to you
Okay.
just because of the amount of square footage. But again, until we know
Okay.
what they're going to do. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Do you have any questions? No. I do have a couple of questions. On page number 5, in that first paragraph, you talk about conditional uses will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Linda just touched on that, I assume. Am I to assume that it would be the city's discretion as to whether those came back before P&Z or whether they were dealt with at your level, Tim?
You mean further expansion on the site?
Well, it says here, conditional uses will be considered on a case-by-case basis.
Well, that's true, but it's not. When we made changes to development review, we put in special provisions wherein the review was required or when it had to come back to you. Clearly, if you put a condition on this that they could only operate between certain hours and they wanted to change that, it would be a condition you had placed. It'd have to come back to you. But other small minor things like heating and ventilation and all that, you follow me, you already have the condition of use been approved. The question is it a significant enough change that it requires looking at it again as a conditional use? And we had changed the code to allow some flexibility in doing that so they wouldn't have to come back for every small minor thing, just the major changes.
But we today could require that anything to do with future expansion of land use, whether it be for parking or these future proposed buildings or playgrounds, we could require that they come back before P&Z rather than be treated at your...
If you're concerned, you would have to come up with an argument of why you want to put that as a reasonable condition on there. Okay,
Well-
and I'm not saying you can't do it.
Well, my argument would be because of the retention ponds and drainage and
But see, they would
fire egress and ingress.
We would still look at remember, staff staff isn't sleeping back at the office. We have to look at that. Our engineers would get into that. So it isn't like, it's something they can just do. They still have to meet all the provisions of code. It's just the more discretionary part of the conditional where you have these impacts that you're looking at. And generally, unless it's substantive enough, it really doesn't. We felt it didn't require coming back, and that's how we've treated conditional uses for, I don't know, since we changed the code way back, about 5 or 6 years ago in the development review. But as I said, do you have the authority to do that? If you're concerned about what would happen on the site, yeah, I wouldn't recommend you do that. It's not, but you certainly, because the code, sets the thresholds. It's just that I think you have to have a valid reason to if I were you, to make that. That's all I'm saying.
And Tim, I think if there is that valid reason, you would probably be sensitive to that and bring it back to the planning.
And that's it. Remember, as the planning director, and I thank you very much, Peggy, as you bring up, I have discretion to bring things that I normally would administratively approve to bring to you. And I have not been shy in doing that. If I thought it were something significant enough, even though it fell under the threshold of my authority, I would bring it back to you all at a public hearing, and that's something that we've done a couple times when we have a significant project to do. So that does come into play.
I appreciate the discussion, and one of the caveats is the future resolution of use of that additional 4 acres.
Well, that would have to most likely come back to you, depending what they're going to do. If they're going to, it depends on how many. If they were going to subdivide it and how many, dwelling units, it most likely would have to come back.
Or whether they would tie it into the church property and want to use the.
Yeah, if they were to expand the property on that, that would come back to you because that's expanding the conditional use. Since they've excluded it from this thing, my interpretation would be anything that they do on that property that was part of the church would come back to you no matter really how minor. Okay? Does that make you feel a little better?
Yes.
Because that is expanding the use of that property.
Yes.
But basically, the bottom line is on any of these conditional expansions for playground, for community center, for a recreational center, a community center, and a playground, it would be subject to the discretion of the planning director whether or not that would require our review and approval.
Well,
bottom line.
Well, no, it depends on what the threshold is. If the
code
says it has to come to you, it's coming to you.
But
some of them, if I thought it would have an impact that I wanted at a public hearing, because one reason we had the public hearings, they may sound like they're just. We're just following some numbers here. But there are things that will come out of public hearings that the staff won't pick up, the public will pick up. I mean, you've already heard a few things that I wasn't aware of. We can't be all knowing on these things, and that's why we definitely have public hearings to not only get input, but to make sure we thrash out any issues that would be in there.
I would say, given the questions, you're better off to err on the side of coming here rather than making judgments that it doesn't meet the threshold.
I think that's a reasonable, advice to me.
But it is left open-ended.
It is left open-ended.
Yes, okay. And next question I have is about Mr. Degg's question about the wall. If I'm reading the plan correctly, there is an existing chain-link fence that runs east-west along the south property line. Is there also a fence that runs north and south along the west property line, separating the property from the residential and or multifamily?
Just a minute, I'll check.
Well, that's where they're going to put their landscape buffers. So you want to know if
There is a chain link fence.
There is a chain link
Yes,
fence.
correct.
So, and I thought there was. So there's a complete buffer to be future landscaped along with the existing chain link
That's
fence.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3. We've already covered the existing lake dimensions. If those lakes had to be enlarged, that would come back before your office, obviously.
Correct.
But
Public Works, et cetera, et cetera.
If those were altered in any way.
Yes, that's correct.
let's see here. I have a couple of questions for the applicant, but what about public sidewalks on 60 and 6th Avenue? Those are
Yes.
Are they to be modified other than where the turn cuts are?
Well, they're usually the public sidewalks, unless they're usually in the right of way. So unless there is,
I don't see that they're going to be modified.
Okay.
But we could verify that, but I think they're going to remain the same.
Okay. I'll ask the applicant this, but to the best of your knowledge, do you know if there are any future plans for a rectory or a residential on-site unit for that property? The reason I ask is because the previous school property had such a unit, and I think it actually was on that remaining 4 acres.
We're not aware of that, but you certainly could ask the applicant if they have any potential.
Okay. And the last question I have is about the tree removal.
Yes.
On page 9, item number 8, comply with the tree removal application, and I think that in a future it talks about it again on the neighborhood meeting minutes. Are there any trees that potentially will be lost that are now in existence?
Yes, they're planning on removing 59 trees and palms. Those are simultaneous, and preserving 80.
Okay, I'm concerned about the hardwoods.
The hardwoods, yes, they are planning on removing some.
Do you know how many there are, and are they of size that can be relocated versus being replaced?
They are.
I mean, have you actually dealt with that
Sure.
subject?
Sure, and typically speaking, the applicant is going to mitigate for all those removals of the trees. There are some that they need to remove for construction. I don't see any that they're going to be relocating.
None relocated.
Correct. And it looks like they're all in, the ones that are being removed are all in what we call construction zone, if you will. A lot of the ones that are remaining are in the periphery, which is what we like to see. But the removal of the actual trees themselves are required for the construction of the building, et cetera.
Right. And the beauty of that site is now its
Yes, the
park-like
oaks, yes.
appearance, and I'm assuming that there will be some trees taken
Yes.
to provide for not only the construction of the site, but also the ponds. And
Right.
I'm
And
always concerned about what's going to be the replacement tree in size. And
Sure. There are approximately 175 trees that are going to be on the site. That includes some of the existing, once again. There's at least 80 that they're preserving.
okay,
As I look at the plan, I notice that the unusual configuration of the ponds is to mitigate how many trees come out. They maneuvered the pond around those existing trees to save in those, and those are usually, I believe, by looking at your table, that those are the most of the hardwoods.
yes, and that's a concern that I have.
It looks like they've saved as many as they can if you want to put stormwater management in.
Sure. Thank you, Sherry.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Just one more question on the stormwater management. Are these proposed lakes strictly for on-site, or will they take in drainage from adjacent properties?
Well, I assume this is really dealt for their project only. I mean, that's
Okay.
what all they're responsible. It's not a community storm drainage project. Okay. Yeah.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And the other thing is that you pointed out that this project, they built the storm drainage. It'll even take care of what they plan possibly to do in the
For any
future. So
future.
it's even more than they need for what they're showing right now on the site plan. Yes.
Additional questions of staff? Everybody okay? If the applicant would like to come forward, then please. Joe, you've been sworn in, and just state your name for us, please.
Good afternoon, Planning and Zoning Council. My name is Joe Schulke, Schulke Stoddard, Vero Beach, Florida. And I'm here to discuss the project a little with you. Mr. Dave Pearson, I see, is here from the church. I don't know if he was sworn in, and but if he has to come up, you might want to ask him that. But he's here. Staff's done a great job with an analysis. The church has gone through quite a bit of due diligence, quite a bit of work with the city. We had a neighborhood meeting in the summer. We didn't have too many people show up. It's kind of disappointing, but it was advertised. I think we had 7 or 8 people come. But I can tell you, of those 7 or 8 people, there was the pastor from the church down the street. Of course, he was curious maybe about the competition. I don't know, but also what was going on. But everybody liked what we were doing. The 7 people were there. I had no objections whatsoever, and they were excited about it, really, to see something going there that I think a lot of them were thinking the potential of what it could have been along State Road 60, although not zoned, potentially could have been rezoned for commercial or planned development with commercial across from the hotel and multifamily apartments or who knows what. Everybody had concerns what would actually happen when they found out that there was going to be this church and really a low intensity of development of a church site. They were excited about it. And you have elevations, I think, and can I ask, was a colored elevation included in the submittal package?
No, not a color.
Okay.
Sorry, not a color elevation, no.
All right. I guess we don't have the LMO together, but I can submit this as an exhibit and give it to you to just
I
pass
can put
down.
it up if you want.
You want me to give it pass?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or you want to put it on the screen? Either way, Joe.
Either way you want to do
You guys
it.
want to take a look?
Joe, it's also on the screen, just the
Oh, okay, good. I just don't think you have, this is a nice colored version,
Yes.
so they can get an idea of what it's going to look like. So, we think it's going to be an asset to the community. It's going to be a pleasant experience driving by there. And so it's going to be nice because there could have been much worse going there. And I think the community and the neighbors were excited to see that they're going to have a good neighbor. The church is set back away from the property lines. We're providing a lot of landscaping. And like you may have mentioned about, some concern about the trees. Yes, we're losing trees. Unfortunately, you have to lose some trees. But we took a lot of effort to design around trees as well, too, the hardwoods and the nice trees. But you do lose some. But the ones we are losing, we're going to be mitigating for, and we submitted a mitigation plan as part of the whole package. So I think you're going to find that not only we saved a lot of nice hardwoods and palm trees, but we're going to have an addition of a lot of new landscaping, too. So it's going to be a really nice project when you pass by. What I did is I took notes of everybody's questions too. So I'm going to try to go through and answer as many of those questions as I can, and then maybe you guys won't have to repeat some of the questions. So Don, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. How do you say your last name?
Croteau.
Croteau, okay.
Plateau.
Forgive me, please.
EAU is always
okay. You had asked about the adjacent south property, the 4.32 acres, and
Yes.
The church does not have any plans with that right now. It's not to say there won't be something that happens later on, but we don't know. But it is true that it could be subdivided. There is a procedure where we could subdivide it out. But I just wanted you to remember, even if it wasn't a conditional use, if it wasn't part of the church, it's 4.32 acres. Chances are anything that's proposed there is probably going to be residential in nature if it isn't the church, probably. And it's going to have to come to the Planning and Zoning Board, even for that use. So you'll see anything that goes there, whether it's an expansion of the church, an expansion of the conditional use, or even if it's a different development in the future, you would see that. Ken, Mr. Dage, you had asked about the wall or the hedge. We are proposing this 6-foot hedge around there, and I think Tim made a pretty valid point. We have, especially across 6th Avenue, there's probably maybe 10 or 15 different property owners. You can only imagine what it would be like if 6 wanted a hedge and 6 wanted a wall, and it's. I think that part of the code needs to be changed as well. And further, we kind of follow the path of least resistance. We showed the 6-foot hedge and all that, but we may consider, because we're going to have a year of construction during that time frame, and landscaping is one of the last things that go in, is come back and talking to you, either trying to change the code or if there's a variance procedure, I don't know what it is, or something like that, you try to lower the hedge a little bit, because if you look at the elevation, it's going to be a beautiful church. You hate to hide it. And like you said before, we want to be part of the community, and we don't want to be locked away from the community. And I think the theory behind buffering is when you have incompatible uses or you have very noisy uses, sure, you want to put that wall up, and if you had a downtown area where you're putting a church in and it's 5 foot off the property line and things like that, yes, put that wall in. Or if you have the community center or a little rec area with a basketball court, you want to do everything you can. But in this case, we're talking about a very busy road, 6th Avenue. Then we're talking about the building being set back quite a distance. And if there's any noise coming from the church, it's generally going to be the areas towards the back of the church where the student areas are and those type of things. We're not talking about any impactful noise. I think it would be an asset to be able to reduce that buffer a little bit. And when I say reduce, I'm not saying get rid of the hedges, because our landscape code requires you put a hedge around the parking areas anyway, but maybe not 6 foot tall. But at this point, we're approved that way, and that's what we have to live with. But we may come back and revisit that with you and with Tim at a later date. So I just want to let you know. And we're not trying to get away with anything, but, we agree, as some of the P&Z said, buffers for incompatibility. We think we're compatible, and we think it's going to be nice to be able to see the church, and that's why I gave you the elevation. So. Going down my list, stormwater discharge. Mr. Dage, you had asked about that, and you're reading kind of the notes from the neighborhood meeting, and we give kind of generalizations on the answers, what's going on, where's the water going, stuff like that. Does some of the stormwater from that site eventually get to the Indian River Lagoon? Yes, it could. But what we have to do is we have to meet the City of Vero Beach's criteria, which is design up to a 25-year storm, the St. John's criteria, design up to a 25-year storm, and the DOT's criteria, which is design up to a 100-year storm. So what that means is we got to analyze how much water or how much waterborne pollutants or pollutants that get mixed in the water go off the site now. And we got to make sure we reduce that dramatically. And we have. It's designed for up to a 100-year storm. So what that means is all the water is directed into these stormwater ponds. They're very large, you may have noticed. It's to hold a lot of water. It's got a large capacity. Only very rarely would it go over top a drainage structure through a pipe, and it will. Can we put the site plan on there? The drainage plan? The north of the two lakes will have an outfall, a high-level overflow that will go directly to the south. And you'll see along that south property line, the west property line of the not included parcel, there's an existing ditch there now, drainage ditch. So it would outfall into that. It would go south. Then it goes through another pipe into, I think it's 18th Street.
Yes.
Yeah, 18th Street. And then that's culverted past the Lutheran Church, and then it turns into an open ditch, goes all the way down to Erie Boulevard, and then there's a pollutant removal structure there that crosses and goes into the river. So that is how the whole system drains, but it goes into our lake system first. Rarely will it ever actually have a discharge and go out and go along that path. But that's how the system works.
Mr. Schulke, you mentioned at the end of the run, before it goes into the river, there's a device to handle any pollutants. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's not built by us. That's the city has that. There's some kind of
city.
structure.
It's already in place.
Yeah, the city's
A baffle box is already
a baffle box.
It's a baffle
box.
box.
I know we're retrofitting a lot, but that's
That was only built about a year and a half ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so the baffle box that the city of Vero has now is adequate to handle the pollutants that come into the box.
Well, actually, by the design of this project and the way we're building it, we're relieving that baffle box of some of its need, because right now you have 100% of the site draining into 6th Avenue and into 18th Street and going down the road. After we develop, we're holding almost all the water on our site, and we'll never even get to that baffle box. Not only that, but discharge that comes off the site and other sites, it washes pesticides, pollutants, beer cans, plastic bottles, and that baffle box is capturing all that. When water does leave our site, it will never leave with those elements, because our stormwater system doesn't just hold the water, but it's designed to remove. It's got I think it's about an 87% efficiency is what that system is, to remove nitrogen and phosphorus, and almost 100% efficiency when it comes to total suspended solids and, of course, floating beer cans and plastic bottles. So we're actually going to help that that baffle box work better for the rest of the city's drainage system.
So your site's pretty much handling the water that it will produce. My next question is, what type of parking lot did you put in?
We have a mixture of asphalt and stabilized grass parking.
Okay.
And the asphalt is primarily in the handicap in the front area. We'll have an area on the northern side towards the back of the church and eastern side, kind of going away from the main intersection, that we show as optional, either asphalt or stabilized, and it's a budgeting reason. And then the rear, it's a stabilized grassed area. So it's kind of a mixture of all of them. I want to point out, though, that we've assumed that all impervious and pavement for the drainage design of our drainage system, as well as those future possible areas for future development, which we'd have to come back to see you. We've designed our drainage system to accommodate all that as impervious. Not that it's going to be, but we did not want to have to revisit the St. John's or DOT. So we did a very conservative system, and frankly, it was easy to do because of the land area we had, because of the aesthetics the church wanted. You see, they have the garden area in between the two lakes, so it's going to be a nice water body. It's going to. We're not talking about grass thing, a dry retention that's going to have long grass and cattails. They're water bodies, and they're going to be very nice.
And with that, my quick question for you: the top of the slab, when you pour your slab for the floor, how high is the top of the slab from the crown of the road on 6th?
I believe our finished floor is 7.7. Let me double check that. And I believe the road is around 5.5, I think, at the intersection. So give me an opportunity to look at these plans. I can confirm that. 7.7.
Can't read it.
Yeah.
The center line of the road is about a 5.4, 5.5.
Okay.
And this finished floor is 7.7. So we're about 2.3 feet above the center line of the road.
And your grade, when you measure your building to your top, where you have your 50 foot, what's the height of the grade, the dirt, from the top of the road, the crown of the road, where you're going to pull your measurement from for your 50 foot?
Oh, I see. It's probably around 7.2.
Okay.
Because we're finished, all the grading around the buildings around that elevation, and the parking is around 6.
So that's where you're going to
6.5.
pull your 50 from?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Dej, I think I covered all your things, but let me know if there's anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Honeymooners, you had asked about ingress and egress?
Yes.
And
Especially on 6th.
on 6th Avenue, yes, ma'am. The present school has 4 driveways on 6th Avenue, all coming out all over the place. The 6th Avenue is actually a county road, so we had to have a pre-application and actually a right-of-way permit issued by Inter-County Engineering. I don't have the permit, but it's just pending a cash bond we have to provide them, like a guarantee to do the work. So it's all been reviewed. Chris Mora directed us at that location of the driveway. We actually want to be further to the north and lined up with the road there. But because generally you want to either be lined up with a road or as far away as possible. And the location that he directed us to pick is actually directly in the middle of the 2 roads on the other side of the street. So we're furthest away from the 2 roads. What that does is avoid conflicts with other roads. It gives us plenty of chance, and the other people in the driveways plenty of chance to see what's coming. And the reason he didn't want it closer to 6th Avenue is because of the turn lanes and everything. I mean, close to the intersection, it's all the turn lanes and all that. So we were basically directed to put that driveway at the location it is. And it is safer because of that reason.
It makes sense.
Yeah, yes, yeah. And I think, like you said, traffic has to come out somewhere. It's unfortunate. It's sort of lined up more or less in the side lot of 2 lots across the street. Not perfectly aligned, but not directly in the middle of the lot. And another thing I can tell you, as far as headlights and stuff, the churches generally aren't too busy in the evening. It's generally, your primary traffic is going to be Sunday. You're not going to have headlights and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, I know that you had asked about stormwater. A couple questions about stormwater. Hopefully, I answered it with what I talked about with Mr. Dej. Did you have any other questions with that?
No, that was good. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Linda Hillman, you had asked about 7 locations for possible future expansions. And like I said, we have to come back for anything of any significance. If we want to build a community center or a baseball field, or I'm not saying we're going to do it, I'm just saying whatever, we have to come back. It would be an expansion of a conditional use. We wanted to provide that on our plans, and not so much even for planning reasons, but for engineering at the city and for St. John's, because we want them to know, and the DOT, that we've already accommodated for impervious area, for future impervious area for our drainage system. So we just wanted to make the point. This stormwater system was designed for a lot more than we had to, and we won't have to revisit that later on. So what will happen later on, if there was an expansion, we come back to planning and zoning, come back to Tim, we show whatever improvements there. And at that time, the St. John's and Matt and the City of Vero Beach would probably say yes. It's an addition of 7,000 square foot more impervious, but they designed for 40,000 more square foot of impervious, and they'd probably just be looking at some minor grading at that point, and then it's more of a planning issue. So that's what we would do with that.
Can I ask
Absolutely.
a few questions of you? The dust limitations, how are you going to provide it from traveling into Oakmont and Keystone in the back?
That's a great question, and it's more of a concern all the time with projects, but it's also more of a concern with the DOT and the St. John's, and even the City of Vero Beach. I think the City of Vero Beach even has a condition of approval about the SWIP plan, I think, don't you, on your conditions? But the state, the federal government has come down on developers and even cities and counties to make sure that we're preparing what they call stormwater pollution prevention plans, and that addresses pollution during construction. That's during construction, not after built. Right. And that addresses dust. It addresses noise. It addresses tracking of dirt onto the roads, when the trucks are delivering truck, all those things. So we actually have a plan that specifically addresses that in the approval. We've got a permit from the DEP for that as well. The city, and if I can, let me take. I almost thought that either Matt made a condition or he mentioned in his staff report about the same thing.
Settlement, Judge? Yes, that's a condition.
Yeah, I want to tell you, we do follow up on that. We had problems with the townhouse up on Ocean Drive, where we had a lot of dust in the air, and the code enforcement was out there on that. Okay. So that's part of this whole.
Okay. And my second question is concerning the trees that are going to be removed in the palms. Is there a possibility that the Parks Department of the City of Vero Beach might want some of those trees, that you can have them come and remove or donate them? Has that ever been a consideration?
It hasn't been a consideration of ours, but I'm sure if the parks wanted the trees before we cleared, we could.
Just an idea, a suggestion.
I can't imagine
I know
we would object to them taking a tree off.
No, but there are costs involved with the city doing that, and whether they're going to live. I mean, obviously they could ask the Public Works to whether they would. They're the ones that handle all that kind of thing on public property.
You should check with Nanette Haynes.
Yes.
Yeah. We can ask.
Yeah.
And just my last question is, there going to be, and I've asked this before with the last church expansion that came here, is there going to be a point of contact for the neighbors where there will be one person during the construction that if they have questions and concerns that they could call? That's very important, and that happened with my neighborhood, and I just feel that the neighbors should not be calling code enforcement or planning department or the construction. I feel there should be one point of contact that they have, so they all have the same number and they can just contact that one person.
I can tell you this, that yes, there can be and will be a point of contact. I wouldn't know how to put it out to everybody on to notify Tim and the city, but they're sort of notified anyway. Before we start construction, before we start clearing, we have a pre-construction meeting, and we invite City of Vero Beach Utilities, City of Vero Beach Engineering. Matt usually will come. Todd Young from the City of Vero Beach Utilities will come, and they're introduced to all the players in the team. And in this particular case, we're fortunate because it's going to be a locally constructed project. Proctor Construction is building the project, and a lot of you probably know Proctor. They do most of the schools in the county, and their office happens to be right down the street, right up State Road 60. Below Bank United or United Bank, whatever it's called. They will have a designated project manager on the project. My firm is retained to also doing daily inspections on the project, so we'll be there on a daily basis. And we do keep in good and close contact with the City of Vero Beach, with Erie County in this case, because there's a right-of-way involved as well. Both, so City of Vero Beach utilities, engineering, planning, and all that. So there's going to be close contact on this size project. They're going to probably be meeting weekly on the site as well, and inviting city officials to go there. And so the short answer is yes. I don't know who that is going to be yet, but it'll probably be with the project superintendent from Proctor will be the main contact going forward.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. I'm looking at it. You said that the building is set back quite a bit from the roads. I read it. You got to correct me if I'm wrong. 122 feet setback from State Route 60 and about 130 feet setback from 6th Avenue. Is that correct?
That sounds correct.
Okay. I just want to get on record the distance, because everybody just said, well, it's quite a distance, quite a distance. What is the exact distance? That's how I read it.
That's
Am I
correct. That's
Am I
correct.
correct?
Looks like it's about a little over 120 feet in both 6th and
Right. 130
State
from
Route
6th and 122 from.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. How are you calculating the capacity in terms of seating? There's two ways. One, individual seats, or are you going to have bench seating, pew seating in there?
That's a question you might have me off guard on, because I don't design the internal structure, but there are floor plans in this
Well,
package.
it's a concern because it is the internal design that determines what the seating capacity is.
Right. It looks like, based on the drawing, if the drawing is correct, they have identified on sheet A1-1. It looks like they've graphically identified seats. So I don't know if that means it means just showing a line, or if they're actually building.
Well, here's where I'm coming from is I operated a facility here in Vero Beach that had primarily bench seating, and they calculated the seating based on 18 inches per person, which I found that even though the facility was, the city said the capacity was 1,100, I could never fit more than 800 in there, because the modern seat width for a person of posterior in the current time is bigger than it used to be, and therefore 18 inches is not adequate. But one thing I want to say is I'm very pleased to see that your proposed parking exceeds the 1 in 3, one car for every 3 people, because my experience is that we don't average 3 people in a car that goes to anything anymore. And so that probably is something we should be revisiting at some point. But you have more parking than required, and that is, I think, a very positive. I'll be concerned when you have a large gathering. If you have a full house, we wouldn't want to have an overflow of parking onto the streets, because there is no parking on the streets around there. So,
And you're right. There's 117 required, but I believe it's 161.
Well, you're proposing 134. It's plus 7 handicap.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So it's 141, which is more than adequate. And I want to congratulate you that you have exceeded, because parking is a concern. It is a concern in a city for a lot of reasons, and it's very important we have adequate parking.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Even he asked if you have any more questions.
So
I'm fine.
Okay. So let's see, 1, 3. Just bear with me a second. I'm just trying to check my notes here. So there's a question regarding sidewalks. And I can tell you that the sidewalks on State Road 60 are remaining, but where there were curb cuts, we're removing the curb cuts and putting a regular curb. So you're not going to have dips in the sidewalk there. On 6th Avenue, there's not a sidewalk, and we're building a sidewalk along our entire property. So it's going to be nice. And right now, there's limited right-of-way. There's only 60 foot of right-of-way along 6th Avenue. And that right-of-way is almost up to the edge of pavement. So we're actually dedicating to Erie County, because it's their road right-of-way, 20-foot drainage and utility easement, drainage sidewalk and utility easement within the first 20 foot of our property. And within that, we're going to build drainage facilities that'll work better for the county's road, and then a sidewalk, so it won't be so cramped, and there'll be plenty of room. And so the sidewalk will be pulled away from the pavement and won't be up right against it, because if we built within the right-of-way, the sidewalk would basically be right at the edge of pavement. So we've stretched that out. So we're dedicating 20 foot to the county. We're building a sidewalk along 6th Avenue, so it's going to be very safe way for pedestrians to get to the church and move back and forth along 6th Avenue. So as far as that question, we also are providing two pedestrian connections from one connection from 6th Avenue, or no, two sidewalk connections from the sidewalk on 6th Avenue into the church, and I think one on State Road 60 into the church. So people will not have to walk into the driveways and will be walking with traffic. There's actually separate sidewalks going right to the church, so that'll make it safer as well.
Oh, that's a good. The sidewalk on the east side, will that be going all the way even along the property that's not included in the site plan?
No, sir. It won't be going to 18th
Just stopping
Street.
there.
It'll
Just
stop at our
side.
south
Okay.
property, at the south development limits, if you will.
Joe, about that 6th Avenue, there'll be a driveway ingress expansion along 6th Avenue that's within that 20 feet of dedicated, or is it strictly the sidewalk and drainage?
Will
6th Avenue be enlarged?
6th Avenue, in effect, will be enlarged. It's only 60 feet now, not the pavement, but 6th Avenue boundaries, property boundaries, rights to put improvements will be expanded from 60 to 80 feet. We're not going to be expanding the distance from one edge of pavement to the other edge of pavement. It's probably about 36 foot wide. We're not actually expanding 6th Avenue. But what we're doing is expanding the area outside of the pavement to be able to build a swale that's safe, that has shallow slopes, and also build a sidewalk.
So there won't be any turn lane on 6th Avenue?
No, sir. No, sir. There won't be a turn lane. Our driveway will be, connected and going through that 20 foot to get to the pavement, but we will not be building a turn lane, if you will, in 6th Avenue.
Any additional questions?
I have two questions. Joe, about the fence that exists on that west property line. I don't see it indicated on the plan, or if it's there, I missed it.
It's on the existing site conditions. It's not proposed to be removed. It's going to stay, and it's on the west property line.
It is on the plan?
It's on the existing site conditions. It shows existing, I think.
It's on the existing conditions plan. You do not have a copy of that.
Okay, but it is on this property?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and it will stay?
Yeah, we don't have any. We're not showing to remove it.
Okay, but I mean, I would like to see that the two property line fences definitely remain on the property and or are replaced with additional fencing.
Right. Okay.
I'm more interested in the security from the residential point of view than anything.
At this point, there's no plans to take it down. It's shown on there. We haven't been instructed to remove it. The contractor hasn't been instructed to remove it. I can't say that they wouldn't want to remove it if it's falling apart and rusting and or replace it, but I just can't commit to knowing what their plans are. At this point, the plans are just for it to remain. It's like anything else, it could potentially change.
Well, again, I have a concern about it because of the residential exposure here and the security. So I would like to see a condition where that fence was retained and or replaced with a similar or improved fence should it have to come down. That's just my opinion.
So that would be a condition then, is what you're...
That's what I would propose.
Okay.
How does that work with the landscape buffering then?
The fences outside of our formal planning area. The fence is right at the property line, and we have a 20-foot landscape buffer, of which primarily most of the planning is going in the middle of that 20 foot. So it doesn't impact us as far as being in the way or anything like that. So it could remain, I don't know that we have an objection really.
But for the if I'm hearing Mr. Cahoy correctly, this site, for the protection of the neighborhood, that fence, let's say it's in good shape right now, should stay to protect the neighborhood. Is that what I'm
That's
hearing?
correct.
All right, so as a condition for the site, that should be put in there that the fence stays in good repair and stays up. It's as simple as that.
Well, let me ask the question, protect them from what?
You don't know.
A hedge? I mean, do you have...
We don't know. It's protecting the neighborhood. The five members either want to put that condition in or not.
What
Could
did the
it-
neighbors
could it
have to say about it?
Could it possibly be protection from children wandering into the retention pond area? Could that be
That's
part-
you make a
There-
very good
There
point.
is a
That's a very good
residential
point.
area across from there.
And
So-
yeah, that's a good point.
Did the neighbors have any statement about this when they met?
No. I can offer this. I don't know what the church's opinion would be. It was never discussed. I do know it's a conditional use permit. I do know buffering is a condition. You may have it in your authority to just require that. I don't know.
According to what we read here, and that's why it's called conditional use. If the P&Z board sees a need for it, Mrs. Hillman just brought up a good point, and I am concerned about that. Mr. Larfer, you just asked, protect from what? Well, you could have children wander over there, or even into the parking lot, because it is a neighborhood. So, if the fence is there now, there's no harm in leaving the fence and keeping in good repair.
Do we have any requirements on, protecting stormwater drainage?
Screening, we have screening requirements, but I don't know of any other than, requiring fences or anything like that.
No, I don't think we do.
It really depends on the depth of the thing. Some have fences on them if they're real steep going down.
Like if it's if it's something that's major, but typically on a site plan, we have, like I said, screening requirements, but I don't know I don't think we have any particular.
I believe if it's a wet storage, you normally may have a fence, but
I think historically this was a school.
Right.
Correct.
Schools are fenced for a
and that's
couple
why
reasons.
they had a fence.
That's
on
why
it.
the fence is
Yes.
there. I don't know of any churches that have been required to fence their periphery, and I would not support that.
And the retention area won't always be wet, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, the retention area is a different issue.
But you're going to have a hedge along that whole thing, which is going to be a thick hedge, right?
Yes.
So people really won't be able to get through the hedge very easily, it is like having a fence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for you to.
I would think the property owner would do what's right, no matter what.
Absolutely.
So, and there's not going to be water in that retention area like a lake.
No.
So,
This is dry retention.
No, this is a wet. It's a
He
lake.
said it's going to be wet.
It's going to be
Yeah.
wet. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I also think Mr. Schulke, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Schulke stated that the church, they want to be a good neighbor.
Yes.
So I'm sure if the P&Z board at their pleasure doesn't want to make this a condition, I think later on down the road, since it was stated on the record, they want to be good neighbors. I think if there is a problem, they would be kind enough to look into it at least, if you're not going to set that condition where the fence either stays put or stays in good repair.
Frankly, it's on the plans. We're not showing to remove it. My recommendation to the church would be keep it, especially along the lake, for the same reason. It's a liability. Why wouldn't they want to keep it there?
Well, you make a good point.
So I think it's just a point of whether you want to condition it or not. But I just can't speak for the church and say whether
No, I understand.
I know they want to take it down or not. I believe they don't want to take it down because they would have instructed me otherwise.
Well, again, you made a good point. Why take it down because of the liability? And one other quick thing you might want to bring to your client that you're representing, once the plant is up and running, if there is a problem with people coming and going from the church, from the parking lot and with pedestrians, that is a county road. There's no reason, it's 35 out there right now, no reason why they couldn't put in a request to the county to reduce the speed for the safety of the folk out there, because you're going to have neighborhood folk there, coming and going. You also have a street light there where you have your New Hampton Inn. And I'm familiar with that area, driving it, going to work and all. And before that light hits green, people are hauling down the road. I'm not a speed expert, so I'm not going to say how fast they're going, but they're moving pretty gosh darn quick, where it may impact your parishioners or people walking on the sidewalk or people trying to get across with kids. So just bear that in the back of your mind. They can ask the county for a reduction in speed.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I will.
I have one other question for you, Joe. Back to the tree issue, referring back to Mrs. Hellman. Why is it not possible, or to put it another way, why could you not accept a requirement that those hardwood trees be root pruned, pre-irrigated, and moved and retained on site? Because you have, in fact,
I'm gonna. If I put on my developer's hat for a minute,
Okay.
I would tell you that it costs for a large hardwood. We're talking about $10,000 to $15,000 to move it. You got to crane the whole bit and multiply that by 10, 15 trees. You're talking about a huge expense. Whereas we're going to mitigate. We're going to provide mitigation, which will provide new trees either on site or in the city itself. So you're not really not having a net loss. And sometimes it can get a little, and I think we did a good job trying to save a lot of the trees on the site. And there sometimes has to be a little bit of a balancing act on, what is reasonable and unreasonable and stuff like that, and private property rights and development rights and the whole bit. And what we try to do is a really good job saving as many trees as we can. And we're working with the city's code to provide the mitigation required. And I think that's a fair balance. So.
what I'm most concerned about is the property line that abuts the residential, again, on the west and on the south side. And while
we're not touching any of those trees for the most part, they're all staying.
What about along the lake, the two lake perimeters there?
Yeah, if you look at the lake, and if you look at sheet C201, if you have it, you can see that we've even moved the lake boundary around a lot. Do you see how the lake has it's not straight. People might, if you look at it and didn't know why, it's just not a straight bank. It's because there's a lot of trees that were going around along the perimeter there. Mm-hmm. The trees that we are losing in the lake, sometimes some of them that are maybe in that area are the smaller ones, but the large ones, that's why we did those cutouts to save those trees in that area. So.
Well, what I was concerned about was taking out mature growth and replacing it with immature growth that's going to take years to fill in. So I'm interested in the buffer as much as I am the trees along those two areas.
Right. Well, I know the buffer itself, we're not removing any trees because the lakes are outside the buffer.
Right.
Within the buffer, we're not touching any of the trees.
Right.
Yeah, whatsoever. They're all staying.
Thank you.
I gather there are none of these trees being removed. They're specimen trees, Tim?
Yes, some of them will be specimen trees.
Some of them will be specimen trees?
Yes, mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's 20 inches or greater.
Right.
Specimen.
The other thing, too, on these larger trees, just so people know, Mr. Scholke is correct. It costs a lot of money to move the trees. And sometimes the developer or the site owner will do that. If you look around town, the ones of you that have been here for a while, a lot of the bigger trees that were moved from one site to the next, they're dying. It really doesn't work. So, we are the tree city. I think Mr. Scholke is making comments here. They did the best they could to retain as many trees as possible. I think, you got the message. We like to keep as many trees as possible. Question on lighting. On the parking lot lighting, about how many light fixtures will you have in the parking lot? Let's say just to give a quick number. You don't have to give me an exact.
I'd have to count them.
All right.
Yeah, it's
more than 10?
Yes, I would say it's more than 10.
Right.
Remember, we're going all the way around and back to.
Let's say it's 20.
Okay.
I'm not holding you to it. Okay. The 20 lights, we have in our code, the lighting such and such, it has to be shielded. The lights, will they be on at night, all night, 7 days a week?
I'm not familiar with our operations. I doubt it.
Okay.
There'll probably be security lighting closer to the building and probably flood lighting or some kind of lighting associated with the building. But I can't give you a 100% assurances on that answer, but
all right, I just wanted to get it on record. And my last part for you, Mr. Scholke, Mrs. Hillman brought this up. During construction, there really should be a point of contact, and that individual's name should be on file. It could be you for the sake of argument, Mr. Scholke. And that should be here for, either at the site there where people can get a hold of you, or here at City Hall where people can call you with their concerns, if any come up. And I think that's should be a condition with this. I don't think we've ever done it in the past that I'm aware of. But with this type of a building, it's pretty large. It's going to be going on for quite a while. There should be one point of contact. So if people do, you may not get any calls at all.
Well,
if it's you, it's you.
I can tell you I do get calls because there's not a site that we do that we don't put our sign, shoulder
Okay.
Fiddle inside our sign and our phone number. And so I get phone calls.
So you'll be
anyway.
the point of contact.
But Proctor Construction's doing this project, and I'm not saying to deflect it because I'd be happy to take any calls, but
Okay.
they also put a project sign. They
So-
always do it on every one of their projects, and they'll have the whole of the team and their phone number and all that. So I can assure you, there'll be a point of contact. And I can tell you right now, to go on the record, I can be the interim point of contact.
That would be great.
Until they define that it's John Granith or someone else at Proctor or whatever. But even when it's Proctor, as the engineer, I still field calls all the time.
I think it would
and
actually.
I'm happy to do that.
It would be actually helpful. You're very familiar with the project. Then, if people have concerns, whatever, I feel very comfortable that you can address those.
Yes, sir.
And assure people, hey, it will be taken care of.
Absolutely.
Okay. And back to the church folk, you stated on the record they want to be good neighbors for the area.
Yes, they do.
I just have one comment for the record, because I understand completely what Mr. Cahoy is concerned about. It was a couple of years back that we debated this whole matter of trees, landscaping, buffers, what we take down, what we mitigate, what size, how big the trunks are, on and on and on. We put a lot of work into that code, and a lot of what we did was, kind of compromising the issue between people who felt this way, people who felt that way. And I think what we came up with was a very good code as far as this is concerned. So I understand your concern, but basically we came up with a good code, and I do see compliance here.
And I think what your staff has said is that they meet the code.
Yeah.
Correct.
Anything further?
Additional questions?
I have none.
None.
Thank you.
Okay. Just want to say thank you for the opportunity to answer your questions, and I'll be right there if you have any more.
Thank you, Joe. The next item we have, if you would like to speak on this particular issue, you can come forward at this point in time, and you'll be heard.
Any of the neighbors at all? Okay.
Were you sworn in, sir?
She was.
Yeah.
Okay. Please state your name for us.
Michael Murphy.
At the microphone. I'm sorry. It has to go on the record.
Michael Murphy, and I live at 496 19th Place in Oakmont Park. And I'm not sure that what I was originally concerned with seems to me to be resolved today from the discussion. I was mainly concerned about traffic on 6th Avenue, which has been growing. Even though it's less than it was when the school was there, it has been growing fairly significantly, and it's very busy. I was also concerned that the ingress and egress from the church not come out and meet 19th Place, because that is already somewhat of a congested area. If people are going south on 6th Avenue, turning into Oakmont Park on 19th Place, there is no turn lane, and so I know when I turn, I'm always looking in my rearview mirror because people do come through that intersection fairly fast, and some of them try to go around on the side, and others stop. So that was a concern. I thought if the egress and ingress came out touching 19th Place, that would be a safety issue, and we've heard that the main entrance is going to be farther south, and I think that's a good solution and a safety issue. So those were basically the concerns, and I was happy to hear that those were anticipated, and a couple of members of the planning committee had those same concerns and spoke to it. And basically, other than that, it seems like a fine project and good neighbors for the neighborhood, and the safety issue, in my mind, seems to have been resolved. So that's about the only thing I have to say. So thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay.
Anybody else? Please come forward. Were you sworn in?
Yes, she was.
Okay. Please state your name for the record.
I'm Connie Boyder. I'm property owner at 412 19th Place in Oakmont Park. And I agree with Mr. Murphy that moving the entrance, ingress and egress into the church property further south was the solution to that problem that he described. And I'm really familiar with a lot of my neighbors, and the consensus of the people that I know pretty well is that we much prefer the park-like setting and don't really think that the 6-foot hedge along 6th Avenue would be necessary. But certainly we prefer the beautiful look of the property as, God created it, and as knowing that the landscaping that will be established there will be beautiful. Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else coming forward? I'm going to close public comment then. Are there closing arguments by the applicant? Any additional things? Okay, and by the staff now.
None, thank you.
Is there any discussion now by the Planning and Zoning Board? We have any particular discussion you want to have?
I think the only thought that I have is we're going to continue monitoring, the traffic on that street. That will always remain a concern, no matter where we are in the city. And there are places we can bring those kinds of concerns then, if we're starting to worry about things. Okay.
Additional comments? We ready to take a vote?
Move for approval.
I'll make a motion
Okay.
that we approve the conditional use site plan application SP 154019 for the Promised Land Anglican Church with the 8 conditions established or recommended by the planning director.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. We're ready to call for the vote.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Hillman?
Yes.
Mr. Croteau?
Yes.
Mrs. Banus?
Yes.
Mr. Lawfer?
Abstain.
I'm sorry?
I abstain.
How do you abstain?
He can do that under the new changes to the opportunity to be heard statute. And he doesn't have to file any paperwork for that.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Thank you. Good luck on the church.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks to all the neighbors who came out. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Department matters?
I don't have really much to say, Mr. Chairman, except I'm going to try to get, I'm working hard on the comp plan. I'm going to try to get the land use element policies and stuff to you next month so we can start reviewing that, which I think is the most critical part of the whole comp plan process. So other than that, we've got a lot of elements to work. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Board members.
Just asking if there was any progress on what was going on with either the diesel plant or Cultural Arts Council.
Well, the diesel plant, an RFP has been the award to negotiate with the number one applicant, which was the Integra Inc., and for a microbrewery and beer garden for use of that. So that was the number one. And so the council directed staff to enter negotiations for the sale of property.
It's not a done deal at this point in time. It's just their preference.
Well, there is, but I mean, not a done deal. No,
Okay.
no, you have to
negotiate.
go through the negotiate. That's
Okay.
exactly right. And the Cultural Arts Village, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
I'm still waiting. They're supposed to provide the final draft charrette report to me, and it's going to be put on our city council agenda for the 15th. And we have a resolution for support of the Cultural Arts Village concept. When our role in that, from the standpoint of the planner, will be helping the implementation of that. And one of the things would be the overlay district that's being considered for the arts district. We can't really do it right away. We're kind of held up because of the comp plan issues, but we can start working on the various aspects of that. And clearly, you would all be involved in input on that.
Okay, as far as our role in the community, as far as volunteering or attending meetings, do we have any restrictions on that, Peggy?
Don't leave.
Sorry.
I was talking to Mrs. Hillman about this a little bit earlier, and as long as you comply with the Sunshine Law, you'll be fine. Remember the appearance of impropriety. Don't talk, of course, outside of this meeting area about matters that could foreseeably come before the Planning and Zoning Board with another member.
Quasi.
And for example, at some of these different groups, they'll put you at separate tables in a kind of a charrette style where you're talking. Don't get at the same table with somebody else at the Planning and Zoning Board. And that's the appearance of impropriety. I know you're not going to be talking about these matters, but you don't want it to look like you could be.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you.
If there's any additional,
Yes, Tim, I have a question about
Sure.
the site plan and property that we approved a couple of years ago, maybe on 17th. It backs up to 17th Street. It might be 18th
Oh,
Place.
Victoria Village.
That now has become a vandalism site.
Well, I know. We had
Graffiti has taken over. The
No, I
17th.
know. They've been made aware of that, and we had discussions with their engineers on that. So I have a feeling this thing is having some problems with the developers of that property. So, but we've notified code enforcement to get in there and see what they can do. We told them there was vandalism. Yes.
Thank
you. Yeah, I have a feeling the project's falling through.
Which project is that?
It's the one that you told me. I'm kidding, but it was that multifamily type project over between 18th and 17th Street.
straight through.
You see that masonry wall when you go along there,
Right,
and
right.
and a couple of the buildings do have some graffiti on them, which we brought to their attention. I have a feeling that project is falling through, and because
Is
they've
that
gone through
permit?
twice to get approvals on that, and now they're running out of time.
Is that permit still valid, or? do
I
they
don't
need-
know. I'd have to look at that, but it's got to be. They've pulled some permits on it, and they were working on it. But
That extends-
I didn't get a good feeling when I talked to the consultant
that's unfortunate.
engineer on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible the way it is.
I'm glad to see.
Glad to see the project on the corner of 10th Avenue and US 1 for the assisted living facility. Yeah, it is finally
Yeah.
getting going.
Yes.
I was
Right.
wondering if the permit was going to be getting pretty close to expiring if that didn't get going. So I'm glad to see it's going.
It was close.
Yeah.
You start throwing rocks.
It's looking good.
It was the second time around on that one.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mrs. Fitzgerald. I had asked you about the height in the zoning where the particular church is going, and you had cited in the code they're allowed to do the 50-foot. I don't expect you to do it now, but I would like to get that section that you spoke about today. I'd like to see that in the code where it's at, and I don't need
Sure,
you to do that now.
sure.
Just
I could
when you
provide
have
it
time.
to Sherry, so
Okay.
you all could.
I can pick it up, but you don't
Sure.
when you have time.
Okay.
Okay.
No
Thank you very
problem.
much.
You're welcome.
And my next concern is if Mr. McGarry, I know you're very busy, but on these buffer walls, we're going to have more development through the city, and where we found today the code isn't quite clear, and I have a concern where if they wanted to put up concrete walls, they could, but if we have in our code where they would use a landscape buffer instead of a concrete wall, we could have the flexibility in there for the planning department.
Well, that's fine, but I'm really, if you didn't get the drift of what I was saying, I'm a little concerned we even have these requirements in here.
Okay.
Because they're basically trying to create I was going to say a ghetto, you know what I mean, an enclosure that's separated from the neighborhood. And you heard what the people like, the park-like setting, you don't have it. You've got these trees, you've got to put these things up even when they're across a right-of-way. I mean, I don't think that was the intent of these things.
Yeah,
They're
not-
really to take care of those uses that would be,
Right.
Abusive to the
conflict with
neighborhood.
your enjoyment of your residential
Agreed.
neighborhood.
In
Not-
other words,
Yeah.
you could have somebody wanting to put
Yeah.
up a concrete wall just to do it, is my point.
So I think
They can.
I think when we look at that, the thing is, we'll have to go through all our residential districts to change that. And I was, but I can certainly look at that. I mean, I've done some rewriting of the conditional use already, so you can understand it better. And because some of the things, even about, for instance, the level of service D, well, that's required in our comp plan.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't even be. It doesn't
This
need to
sounds
be there.
terrible.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah.
Well, all our has D. If but I would say like Route 60 is probably at least at a C or higher. I mean, we've got good flows on that. That's how we, when we did the Twin Pairs thing, there's a lot of capacity on that road.
If we took out the concrete wall possibility or block wall, masonry wall, if we took that out, the individual property could still design that wall, whether we have it in or out of our plan. They could be the one to choose to put that wall up. Is that correct?
I would say so. I mean, we don't normally get in telling a property owner, you can't build a certain wall. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think that's what we need. Those kind of things we can discuss, because these are conditional uses in the residential neighborhood, and we could look at what the intent is and what we're trying to accomplish through all that.
Looking at long hedges like you see further south here, you're driving down the street and you have hedges on both sides. That is not an attractive view, especially if the property is not. If it's a residence home, you can understand why they want the hedge, but for the person in the vehicle, they may rather look on into the site, like in the farmland. When you drive in the farm, you like to look out and see more. And I think that's where we're making a mistake. Instead of initiating this on every single case, it should be a discretionary call, whether it's appropriate for that particular setting or not, and we can give some credence to making exceptions.
Yeah, I just don't like the whole idea that you've got this use in that neighborhood and you're suddenly trying to segregate it from the neighborhood by, making it an enclave that doesn't blend in with the community. Let's face it, a lot of our churches blend very well in the community, and I don't think we want to have, these kind of rules in place that make it difficult to do that.
I'm not talking about the buffer between them and a residential area. That I'm not referring to. I'm only referring to where it's a public open area across a main street and et cetera. Or the residences on the other side of the street.
Oh, yeah. Well, right now, the way the code, how the code is now. That's why. And you're right about that. See, I think that's clearly, if they were abutting the property, you could understand that.
Yes. And then
but when you've got a right of way across the street, especially a busy street, makes no sense, and you're blocking some of the pretty, the view of the church property and that. Exactly. No, I agree.
And you can see better as you're coming around the corner without that hedge there.
Right. Well, we got to have a site triangle. So.
I understand. If there's no other business to come before the board?
None. Second, again, we'll move we adjourn, which
we
is
adjourn.
not debatable.
Okay. I think I have a 3:30.
Okay, Don? I'm fine.
Good job.